I'm not so freaking out.
Yeah.
Because I've learned after all that, right, and going back to school, so we'll stay on track. I graduated in '06. So I graduated from in high school from '05. So I did my program quick. I did it straight
Wow.
through until I could finish. Well, 3 months before I graduated, I found out I was pregnant with my ex. And we had broken up so many times. Just, we were oil and water. And I got pregnant and I freaked out. I'm like, I guess I'm supposed to be with you, even though he was in jail because he was caught with drugs. And I'm like, dude, really? So
Yeah, don't get caught. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, but also just, I was like, do I do what my mom did? My mom married, my stepfather because of my little brother. She got pregnant with my little brother and then married him. And I'm like, did she do it for the wrong reasons? I don't really know. She
Right.
says she did it for him. But at the same point, then she didn't want to leave him. And I'm like, okay, so is it for comfort? Do you really love him? I don't know. I'll never know.
Well, and the same thing for you. I mean, you didn't know exactly what a healthy relationship looked
No.
like. And you didn't know, did you feel like you loved him? I'm sure that you did. Like you
Felt
were,
like it.
Yeah, at the time, you were
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, this is
Yeah.
what we're supposed to do. And then
Yeah.
I'm sure at some point you realized this is like, Mom, this is a pattern. This is not
This
good,
is- yeah.
right?
Yeah, because he started, and he had already been doing it. My family tried to warn me, my aunts, my grandmother.
Right. But
that
you don't
he was-
listen. I
No,
mean, you're what,
didn't want to listen
19?
because I wanted to get out of my mother's house. I wanted it. I wanted that escape after I got out of college because I knew I had to go back. And I'm like, because now I'm pregnant. I'm like, what do I do? And I married him for her, not realizing that he could still be a dad. But he had already been narcissistic, and then after being narcissistic, then he threw me into her because he wouldn't talk to me. We would have conversations, and he had gotten hurt at work, so he wasn't working, and so he was watching her most of the time. But he wouldn't let me. Like, I'd come home from work, still have to make dinner, still take care of the baby, and I'm like, I have no time to just breathe.
So this is a repeat of living at your mom's house. Only this is becoming your life.
Yes,
You're still working. You're still taking care of the home.
Yeah.
You're still with somebody that doesn't do their share.
Yep, just like my stepfather did. And what was so frustrating was that my church at the time did not back me up in the way that they were like, no, you should get married, like kind of forcing the issue of, with having a kid, that you should be married. And when he finally threw me into her, I was like, okay, we need therapy. But I still moved out for the meantime to keep us safe, me and my daughter safe. And
You mean like he physically threw you into her?
yes, she
Oh.
just started walking. She was a year old, and he threw me into her, and she fell over because she was just barely able to walk.
Right. She's teetling and toddling
Yes.
she's a roly-poly, and here comes Mom.
Exactly. So that was like my turning point of all that time trying to work, trying to take care of everything.
You're like, no.
And I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so we started going to therapy through church, not realizing, or counseling. I guess she wasn't really a real therapist. And she was like, oh, you just want to go out and party. And she was listening more to him. And that's how I realized he was such a narcissist, because he would turn any woman on his side. Any woman. It didn't matter. And she was like, oh, you just want to party. You just want to go be a young adult. Because I had her right before I turned 21. So
Right.
I had her March 23rd of '07. And my birthday is April 17th, '86. But that year I was turning 21. So she tried to play it off like I was this person that was going to go and be unresponsible. And I'm like, no. I mean, yes, I want to have a life, but I know I have a responsibility and I want to take care of my child.
Were you even like known for partying? I mean, it doesn't
No.
even. Nowhere in your story have I heard that you were like.
Some a little bit when I was
I'm
going through
sure,
all the
yeah.
teenage stuff. And
But I mean, it obviously wasn't in control of your life. Like
No.
you were too
I
grown
was-
for
exactly. So yeah, I had some friends I would hang out with. It was always the country boys, and I still have two that are friends from that time frame. One that I talk to a lot more, and it's funny because our kids ended up dating each other. It was like, what?
Oh
Like,
my
gosh.
goodness.
Because him and his wife got married at a young age because they were, I think, in their senior year when they had their oldest.
Okay.
And I knew them, so I kept up with my friends, but it was more just being country, like we'd go out, hang, and be around a campfire and,
Right.
drink a little bit.
Yeah, but you weren't like at the
But-
club dropping Molly.
Right. And I just wanted a breather. It wasn't me asking. When we would try to get in conversations before he threw me into her, he would just shut down. No, I don't want to talk about this right now. And all I wanted to do, I'm like, I get you're tired. I'm tired too. I'm not asking for a lot. I just wanted to sit in my bed and read my book. I love to read books. That's always been my out since I was little, because I would read The Babysitter Club, like all these different books.
Oh, yeah.
But it was my way out from my horrible life to kind of take myself on a vacation mentally.
Yes.
So that's sometimes all I wanted to do right before bed. And even when she was a baby, oh my gosh, I'll never forget. And going back a little bit, when I had her, he was working, and he would not, before he got hurt, would not wake up with her in the middle of the night. And I was losing my mind. I had such bad postpartum. There was one night I'll never forget. She was screaming and screaming and would not be quiet. And he would get upset because he's like, I need to work the next morning, blah, 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 blah. Because I was out of work for that little bit of time after having her. But I had a C-section, and it was an emergency C-section. So they had put me in every position you can think of.
Right.
Could not get her out. And then they go in the emergency C-section, and they didn't even put the drapery up very good. So it was partially down, so I could see myself getting cut open. I saw the mirror. Like, it was just a horrifying experience at the age of 20. And then they took my daughter off for 3 hours, and I did not get to see her. I'm like, is she alive? Because even though she was crying at me, I'm like, was she going downhill? Y'all acted like she was about to die, like you had to get her out, because her heart rate went down to 25 beats per minute from 150 twice.
Oh my gosh.
And that was because she kept getting stuck. Well, I found out it's not, I don't have a tilted uterus is what they normally say. I have the pelvis is not curved on one side like it should be. So she got stuck because she had a 14.5 centimeter head. She had a big head for a thing. She has my dad's head and I have my dad's head. It's a pear shape. It's from my father's side of the family. It's hilarious. And she was a long baby. She's now 5'8", and just like she was born
She's
21,
tall,
I think,
yeah.
and a half inches long. Like she was such a long baby. She was 7.6 ounces, which is so funny because that's what I was born as. So she is just like my mini me, especially since we're both, I don't follow, the like Aries and all that, but I am like, if you were going to understand why we're so similar, she falls in the area of Aries.
Yeah.
So we're both a Ram, and that's the only part I've ever tried to understand is why we butt heads so much. And it's because we are so alike and born so close together in months wise anyway.
Yeah.
So anyhow,
so you go
she
to
was
counseling.
a colicky baby. Mm-hmm. And so he wouldn't wake up, and I almost threw her into the wall. One night I went to pick her up, and I was ready to chuck her when I picked her up. And my mom had told me, if you get like that, you have to set her down and walk away. It's okay for her to cry. But I was always so worried because he would get upset because he had to sleep to go to work.
Right.
So I was in this push and pull, and she did it until she was about 6 months old. So my depression and, started kicking in because of the postpartum, and it's like my life was just getting worse.
Yeah.
Not that she was not ever a burden in a way. I loved her so much, but I see why moms react sometimes the way they do in postpartum.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
I was a young mom. I was 17. So I was going to school. I was, trying to graduate. I was doing all those things. And I had one of those nights. I literally had to go get my own mother and be like, I can't deal with her. Yeah. Like, you have got to take her, because I was to that point. Like, I feel like, especially being young, I mean, now that we're older, I feel like we would have a better response,
Yeah.
But like,
very much.
We're trying to figure out the world already.
Yeah.
We don't know what the heck we're doing.
Nope.
This kid won't shut up.
Exactly.
You love them. That doesn't mean you don't love your child.
Exactly.
But you're just at your wit's end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why when I finally divorced after we walked out, we did the therapy, it wasn't working. She kept blaming me, kept siding with him. I was like, I'm done. I'm not going to keep continuing to do this because I just can't keep it. So I had to move back in with my mom. But I took my daughter. I was like, I know he's not responsible. And still to this day, she is 18 now, and he only took her maybe 8 times to the doctor her whole life. I knew I was the one that had to be the parent for my daughter, and I was not going to let her fall down a bad hill.
Right.
I was like, no, you are not going to grow up in a very bad area. And she still has had some hard times. That's another story. But at that point, when I left, I moved in with my mother in the basement that used to be my brother's room, and had this little toddler bed next to my bed, but half the time she got in bed with me.
Yeah.
And I had to do that for months. And when I went through the divorce with him, they said that I could not annul it because we had our daughter, even though that was not during the wedding, or, after we got married, that was beforehand. It still makes us where we could not annul the marriage, which I was so upset about because we only lasted 3 months before he threw me into her. And I was like, I'm done. I walked away because I knew that once that starts, it never stops.
Right.
And my dad had always said, don't let a man put his hands on you.
No.
And after my stepfather doing what he did, I just said, nope, I'm not going to let this become the life for my child. And it was hard because moving back with my mother, she charged me rent. And because I was trying to get out of that marriage, they said because he wasn't working, I was going to have to pay him alimony. And I'm only 21. She's about to turn, I turned 22 when that happened. And I'm trying to take care of a baby. I'm paying his bills and my bills, trying to get away from him because we were trying to get it where the lawyer for me was a good lawyer. He didn't charge me too much, but he was trying to get it where I would not have to pay alimony. So in order to get him to not agree to not wanting alimony, I had to keep paying his bills. Once everything was finalized, then I weaned him off and stopped paying things slowly. I was like, no, now you've signed the agreement. You can't charge me for alimony. I was so smart that way because the lawyer did not tell me that part. But I knew I had to do something, and it sucked because I was penniless. I've always been in debt my whole life, and I still am. We're trying to get out again. Every time I've gotten out, I've let somebody else in my life, another man, take me down every time because I have such a big heart. And
so you're back at home. You're with mom.
Yeah.
You're living in the basement.
Yep.
You're a single mom now.
Yep.
Where's God?
God, I was still believing in him, but I stopped going to church because of how my church turned their backs on me. I went back after the divorce and I felt so
church hurt,
burned. Yeah. I was like, you guys don't even talk to me. You act like I'm not even there. Like I had no support. I felt abandoned. And I was like, God, I know you're there.
But these people are not.
No.
Right.
And what kind of brought me back, but I still didn't go back to church, was my brother. It was one of my Thanksgiving meals. Anna was very little. Caitlin was very little. And my little brother had a dirt bike. It was one of those little mini ones that only one seater, but he had my cousin on the back. And they went down the dirt road at the end of our road. And there's this part of the dirt road that was not private property, but the people tried to act like it was. And because they didn't want my brother driving down there, they put a steel cable across, no signage, no nothing, almost decapitated him. He's the second to the youngest. He was 12 at the time.
Oh my gosh.
So we're making Thanksgiving dinner, and all of a sudden our neighbor calls us and said, because we were wondering where my brother and my cousin went to. We're like, where the heck are they? It's Thanksgiving, And she calls and is like, where's your mother? I had to call the ambulance. And I was like, what? I was like, ambulance? And my mother ran over, took the phone out of my hand and was like, what? And she goes down there, and I have Caitlin, so I can't leave. I have a baby. And my brother was literally like laying in a pool of his own blood. And he was dead in the Nightingale in Station 1 in Toano. Best freaking fire department. They earned an award for it, and they deserved it. They got the Nightingale there, and he was dead, they said, for 8 minutes. He should have been brain dead. And he went to VCU, and their pediatric ICU, or NICU, I guess it's ICU, not NICU because that's for babies, but it was like that. So they saved him. And he's had a trach his whole life, still does. He cannot talk without hearing the whisper. Like, you have to listen. So he doesn't typically talk on the phone because you can't hear him.
And that's all from that?
And that's all from that. And that's when I knew, I was like, God, you're so real, because my brother should be dead.
Right.
By the time they got to him out in that field, lost the blood, and then got him to the hospital, he should have been dead. And he's alive to this day. And I was like, God, that is... So I knew that really established my faith at that point.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Even more.
How was your cousin? Was she affected at all?
He actually.
Oh, okay.
Because they're actually 2 weeks apart. Same year and everything. My youngest aunt and my mom had their sons at the same time. It's so funny. So he had gotten really badly scraped up. Like, it scratched his face, but because he was behind my brother got the brunt of it. Plus, my cousin, unfortunately, was blocking the brakes because they were on a Mini, and it should never have had two people on it. Oh. So it's not fully his fault. They both should not have been on it anyway, or especially that far from the house. But because that was about, I'd say 3/4 of a mile to a mile behind at the end of our road. And
screw those neighbors too, by the way.
Oh, I wish my parents had sued them, but my dad was told by the lawyer that if you go to sue, then the insurance company if we were to lose in court, would not pay the medical, period. Even if we lost, they would not pay the medical and cover it. And my dad's insurance was so good from the Federal Reserve, he was like, I can't, we've just got to have this paid for, because that, all the medical expense, it was like $150,000, if not more, that my parents would have had to pay, because he stayed in the hospital for like a month after that. So I knew, like, with everything going on, I had to help out. So I helped out for a little while longer. I'm going to say I was there for another year. Maybe only 6 months before I met my second boyfriend, after having my, not really my second, but
after your divorce.
After being divorced, that was my first relationship. And first real relationship. I mean, I had seen some guys and trying to feel them out without my daughter, that, you know, I'd try to just kind of, I didn't want anybody to be introduced to her.
I completely understand that.
I felt so not respected in a lot of ways, or understood, because so many around my age at that time of my life were not as responsible as me.
Well,
so
and they were looking for something else, and you're looking for a relationship.
Right.
Because you have a daughter.
Yeah. No, I didn't want some fling, because I'm like, you can't be over when my daughter's at home.
Yep.
I don't want her around somebody unless they're going to be in my life.
Yep. That's exactly how it was with me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Once I got divorced, I was like, look, if we're going to date, we're going to do it secretly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're not meeting my kid until something evolves, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it.
So finally meet this other guy. He's got a daughter and a son, but the younger daughter was close to my daughter's age. They're about 6 months apart in age. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to start dating this guy. And after a while, I finally let her, you know, meet him, and then our. But
only in social settings.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
And then after that, about, I don't know, 6 months later, then he started sleeping over, and then we decided to get a place together. The first 2 years were good, I thought, anyway. But year 3 and 4, I realized that he was very hard on his son. His son would make a mess or whatever. His son was about 9, and he would beat the crap out of his son. And I'm like, I started realizing, like, he was controlling me. He was making me feel bad about being a mechanic. And it was like, why am I in this same kind of relationship again? And his son didn't even do anything wrong half the time. It would be like, let's say he didn't wipe properly and his boxers had a little bit of, you know, something in it. It's like, really? And I realized how bad of a guy he was, because I saw how much his daughter didn't get in trouble, mine did. And I'm like, no. And I tried to stay for his son, because his son was the oldest, and just.
But you're seeing that pattern again.
Again.
Yeah. And he
didn't want to let me go to church, and I would take the kids to church sometimes without him. And he was Catholic, I was Christian. I was like, I'm not going to a Catholic church. I follow what I follow because I believe that's right. I believe Jesus came back and died for our sins, and, you know,
I don't pray to Mary, I pray to God. Exactly.
Right. So there was just so many things that didn't line up, and we just always butted heads, because I always try to date guys that were religious. That's what I wanted when I was younger. And I dreamed the princess dreams, even though now as an older adult, you realize how horrible those stories are with the Wicked Witch and, you know, the stepmother for Cinderella. And I mean, there's just so many bad stories. Oh my gosh. The narcissist with, and Beauty and the Beast was my favorite. I love Belle. But that darn guy, Gaston.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, he was such a narcissist too, trying to control her. I'm like, no.
I love Jasmine, and I realized that she loved like the thief and like the bad boy, and I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
And we realize as we're older that it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But what I did learn from those, and I see that now, didn't see that then, is that even though I was looking for that Prince Charming, I was also wanting to be that strong woman that stood up for herself.
Right.
And also get through the bad, and they're still good. Like that, there is still, and I reminded myself of that with God. So finally, I had to, before we ended our relationship with how he was treating the kids, because I realized I couldn't stay for the kids any longer.
Right.
He raped me, so that was my third rape.
Fourth.
Well, yeah, fourth, I guess, because I
Fourth,
never
yeah.
count the sexual assault as something different.